Thanks for coming out. It's great to see you all. Welcome to our Fall 2025 book news. Presenting today, I'm Jake. If any of you don't know me, we also have Dale in her first book news, Rachel, and Haley in her first book news. So, without further ado, we are going to get started. The first section of books fits the theme of adventure with the quote, "Let us step into the night and pursue that flighty temptress adventure." And I'm going to start us out. My first selection is The Gales of November, The Untold Story of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a nonfiction by John U. Bacon. Maybe you know about it from the news. Maybe you know about it from the Edmund Fitzgerald song. On November 10th, 1979, the freighter SF Edmund Fitzgerald sank in a storm on Lake Superior. All 29 crew members aboard perished, and no bodies were ever recovered. That storied shipwreck forms the basis for this book. Constructed in Detroit in the 1950s, the Edmund Fitzgerald was a record-breaking 729 feet long, capable of hauling tens of thousands of tons of iron ore from mines in Minnesota and Wisconsin to factories in Michigan and Ohio. She had a reputation for attracting a crew that was the best of the best. Yet she went down without ever sending a distress signal. What kind of storm does it take to sink a state-of-the-art freighter with an elite crew? Just what happened out there. As a relative of one of the lost puts it, only 30 know what happened, 29 men and God. They're not talking, and everyone else is just guessing. Michigan native John Bacon, nevertheless, consults the latest meteorological and forensic evidence to try and piece together the final hours of the ship. But you'll learn about so much more than just the wreck. You'll learn about the conditions on the Great Lakes, which can be more dangerous than those on the ocean. In the century before the sinking of the mighty Fitz, an estimated 6,000 ships and 30,000 sailors lost their lives on these inland seas. And those are the low estimates. In fresh water, waves can form higher and closer together than on the ocean, and the weather can change on a dime. But I don't need to tell that to an audience of Midwesterners. You'll also learn about the network of mining, shipping, and manufacturing that made up the economy of the Great Lakes region, which, in the words of the author, built the American century. You'll learn about the network of churches, union halls, and bars, especially the bars that supported the sailors when they were on dry land. And you'll learn about each of the 29 men who went down with the ship, and the partners, children, and parents they left behind. It all comes together to form a very informative and very human read. When I first started reading this book, I figured it would be what I call a dad's and grandpa's book. But something surprised me when I started telling people I was reading a book about the Edmund Fitzgerald. A few people said, "What's that?" But most people, regardless of their age or gender, got really excited about it. Maybe it's because we have a Great Lake right there. Maybe it's because spending 9 months of the year on a ship is something that's just so foreign to us, we just can't help but want to learn more. Or maybe it's the fact that there is nothing quite like a sailing yarn. Either way, The Gales of November is a first-rate work of narrative nonfiction that will appeal to all sorts of readers. It came out earlier this month, just in time for the 50th anniversary of the sinking, and is available from the Glencoe Library.
I think I'm next because I have the other shipwrecked book. You want to take a different view of shipwrecks? This is a fun one. Picture yourself on a luxury cruise to Antarctica. It's Christmas Eve and you're preparing to participate in a kayak excursion to a small remote island on the Arctic Peninsula, populated by penguins, seals, and boiling geothermal vents. How fun! Suddenly, before anyone even leaves the ship, a man is attacked by a giant albatross, the size of a small car. His camera is smashed, his head bloodied. Despite this ominous attack, preparation for the excursion continues. What have you gotten yourself into here? The Unveiling by Kwan Berry, I always get her name backwards. The unveiling is told from the point of view of Stryker, a black female location scout for a film company looking to make a film about the disastrous Shackleton expedition. It's foreshadowing. The rest of the party is made up of wealthy white tourists, some with kids, and their somewhat shady Russian guides. Once the albatross is put down in a most gruesome way, did I mention this is a horror novel? The party finally launches their kayaks and arrive at the island, where they explore ruins of previous expeditions and mingle with thousands of penguins, which smell about as bad as you think they would. After another bird attack, the group gathers to leave, and something happens. A flash of white in the sky, then something happens. And all of a sudden,
It's classified.
and then you get the word look. And you get the word, do I have to? And it just keeps going. And you wonder, what the heck is happening? When Stryker regains consciousness, she's alone in her kayak. Her guide is dead, and there are no boats in sight. As Stryker and the rest of the survivors slowly regroup, strange things start to happen, and Stryker becomes increasingly unreliable as we learn she is without her meds, and is haunted by events from her past that are slowly revealed. History begins to merge with the present. The sun never sets. The glare from the icy white snow is nearly unbearable, and ghosts from the past appear to haunt the survivors. Stryker occasionally becomes someone she refers to as Other Stryker. She has no memory of what she does as Other Stryker, but not all of it is good. Hint, the black pages, she was Other Stryker. The book works on one level as a horror novel, but is also a literary novel exploring race and class. Stryker and her sister were adopted by white religious parents and brought up on a strange, isolated island. The backstory slowly merges with her current predicament as Other Stryker takes control with increasing frequency. The book is at times disorienting, beautiful, and horrific. Will Stryker make it off the island? Is there still a civilization to return to? What is real and what is in Stryker's head? You'll have to read to find out.
Okay, we're now going to move on to stories that are journeys. In your program, it's called The Journey is My Home. My next selection is Hot Wax by M.L. Rio. This novel focuses on a woman at two different points in her life, guided by two untamable forces: her iconoclastic father and the power of rock and roll. The summer Suzanne turned 11, her up-and-coming rock star dad, Gil Delgado, took her on tour. She was on the road with Gil and the Kills during their 1989 tour, experiencing his world of loud music and hot rods until the tour ended prematurely in disaster. That tour becomes the stuff of infamy, but Suzanne and Gil's relationship never recovers. 29 years later, Suzanne is entering middle age and unhappily married to a total square named Rob. When Gil passes, he leaves Suzanne his souped-up Ford Ranchero Blondie. That's all the excuse Suzanne needs to hightail it from Florida to California, seeking out Gil's widow and answers. She's joined by Phoebe and Simon, two young drifters on the flea market circuit. Blondie tows their Airstream trailer along the same route she took all those years ago. On the road with these two young lovers, she finally starts to feel like her true, authentic self again. But Suzanne is a woman both haunted and hunted. Traveling along these roads is dredging up some painful memories, and Rob is tracking her down. He might be a dweeb, but who knows what he's capable of once he catches up with his estranged wife. Hot Wax is told in chapters that alternate between the past and the present, called Side A and Side B. Each section revs to a thrilling conclusion where they dovetail geographically and thematically. It'll have you guessing and dreading all the way to the end. As a novel, Hot Wax is a lot of things. It's a father-daughter story, a coming-of-age tale, and a celebration of rock music. It's also a story about desperate people in marginalized places, eking out lives on their own terms. And from her writing, I can tell that M.L. Rio takes music very seriously and recognizes the power it has to change the lives of those people. That's always something I love reading about. Something else I loved about this book is that the writing is very evocative. This is one of those books where you can hear the amps in the engines, taste the whiskey and the stale beer, smell the gas fumes and cigarette smoke. And in an interview, the author admitted that despite having a permanent address in Philadelphia, she spends most of the year on the road. So I suspect that those road tripping elements are very accurate as well. So if you're a fan of tour stories like Taylor Jenkins Reid's Daisy Jones and the Six, or the movie Almost Famous, this is going to be a perfect read for you. If you're looking for a rowdy musical read with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, check out Hot Wax. It came out last month and is available from the Glencoe Library. And my final selection is a perfect read just in time for Halloween, Coffin Moon by Keith Rawson. This horror novel follows a burned-out Vietnam veteran and his teenage niece hunting a vampire across the Pacific Northwest. It's 1975 in Portland, Oregon, and Vietnam vet Dwayne Miner is trying his best. He's balancing his new sobriety while still tending bar at his in-laws tavern. He and his wife Heidi are raising their adopted 13-year-old niece, Julia. Julia is having troubles of her own with a mom who's in prison and an abusive stepfather who's dead. You do the math on that one. And he's trying to keep the nightmares at bay. It's tough, but everybody is managing. Everything changes the night Miner catches his mother-in-law meeting with a mysterious man named John Varley in the back room at the Last Call Tavern. He sleeps all day, has superhuman strength, and despite his youthful appearance, has a rap sheet dating back to the turn of the century. That's right, Varley is a vampire. But Miner doesn't know any of this when he crosses him. Varley responds by murdering Heidi and her parents. Stricken with anger and grief, Miner and Julia set out west to track down Varley and claim their vengeance. But how are these mere mortals supposed to compete with a brutal undead bloodsucker? To find equal footing with Varley, Julia asks around and finds out about a mysterious nocturnal society calling themselves the Children's Museum. There, she chooses to undergo a moonlit ritual involving sharp fangs. If I'm going to write a vampire book, it needs two things, grit and blood. The 1970s setting, with so much of the nocturnal action taking place in dive bars and seedy motels, is supremely gritty. In fact, reading this book can feel more like reading a police procedural than a supernatural horror because you have these hardened protagonists following leads and a trail of bodies. And there's blood too. The vampire action is vicious and brutal. But, anatomically speaking, you can't have blood without heart. And Coffin Moon has a surprising amount of heart. We see the bonds of family tested and affirmed as Miner and Julia continue on their quest. And we see that even supernatural beasts can be driven by some very human emotions. So if you want a hard-hitting vampire horror, Coffin Moon is a no-brainer. Same goes if you are a fan of vampire movies like the fantastic Sinners that came out earlier this year. But if you are a fan of thrillers, crime procedurals, or anything like that, you might also like Coffin Moon. It came out last month and it's available from the library.
Okay. Hi. You guys might not know me. I'm new. I am the new adult services librarian. I work full time. I don't know how anyone does this. This is crazy. Working every day. Here we go. All right.
40 years to go.
Yay! Oh my God, I can't wait to retire. Okay. Anyway, this is my pick. It's Catabathis by R.F. Kuang. It is a fantasy novel, so I know that some of you are going to tune out now because it's a fantasy novel, but stay with me because it's very good. I think that people are into fantasy. The Glencoe community, normally, you guys don't really check out a lot of fantasy books, but I think that you guys could be into fantasy if you started with an easy book. This is a great book to start with if you are interested in trying fantasy. So, it was written by R.F. Kuang, and it came out in August. She's been on the New York Times bestsellers list for Babel and Yellowface. The plot is about two graduate students who must travel to hell to save their professor's soul. He is the only one who can give them recommendations, as he is very well respected in the field. So a recommendation from him would mean an instant job in academia. In this universe, magic is real, but so is physics. So both kind of work against each other. And our two main characters, Alice Law and Peter Murdoch, are studying to become magicians. There isn't a lot of build up to the plot. It just immediately jumps right in, which is why it's so great for people who are new to fantasy. You don't have to wait around for something to happen. There aren't a ton of lengthy explanations either. It's just go, go, go. So there were a lot of references to other works in Hell, which I thought was really, really interesting. There were a lot of references to Dante and the Legend of Orpheus. This book is a little big, but what got me through it was the relationship between the two main characters. It was very, very complex. They, are constantly pitted against each other by their professor. He abuses his power and he manipulates their relationship. So they are friends, they're not friends, they're enemies, they like each other a little bit. So it's really, really great, and it's what kept me, going, because I'm not a big reader. I'm an audiobook person. Was knowing that there's just so much more to their relationship. The way that the book is written is it's split between the present and the past. So in one chapter, they're walking through hell and they're going on their adventure. And then in the next chapter, it's giving more context to their relationship. If you are interested in themes of magical realism, complex character relationships, mythology, and academia, this would be a great book for you. It's also getting a TV show on Amazon Prime, so I would read it before it comes out. Yeah, really quickly. I know, I'm also very surprised. Yeah.
My next selection is not fantasy, but it is French. So that's close. The Martins by David Fonkinos, translated by Sam Taylor, came out actually in 2020 in France and was a big hit. It's finally making it to our shores. It comes out later this month, so I don't have it with me yet. The Martins is a book told from the point of view of a successful and unnamed author who is struggling to write a new fiction book. On a whim, he decides that he will write nonfiction this time. He will tell the story of the next person he meets on the street, who turns out to be an elderly woman named Madeline, pulling a purple shopping trolley full of groceries. The writer tells Madeline he's going to write a book about her and invites her to have coffee, which I don't know how I would react to that. I think I would run, but the woman has groceries that need to go into the freezer and instead invites the writer into her home. The writer writes, quote, "In her shoes, I would never have let a writer into my apartment that easily, particularly a writer in search of inspiration." The Martins is arranged into short chapters, often 2 to 4 pages. It almost reads like a journal, detailing events as the writer gets to know Madeline, then her protective daughter, Valerie. While the family appears boring and normal at first, the name the Martins is very common in France. The writer sets out to remain objective, recording stories and events as they happen, but finds himself being pulled into the family's life despite himself. Madeline, it turns out, was a former dressmaker for Karl Lagerfeld. The writer shares an interest in Karl Lagerfeld. Her husband has passed away, and she thinks about a lover she had before her husband, who left without explanation, wondering what happened to him. Valerie, the daughter, fears her mother is in the early stages of Alzheimer's. Valerie invites the author to have dinner. Valerie, the daughter, invites the author to have dinner with her and her family, and the author attempts to befriend Valerie, her husband, and children with mixed results. Valerie is unhappy in her marriage, and the author begins to worry she may be interested in him. The book is funny, told with irony and self-deprecating humor, and as the author gets further involved in the lives of this, quote, ordinary family, it begins to affect his own life and current relationship with an estranged girlfriend. Like I said, published in 2020 in France, the book was a successful bestseller. The book is a fast read and hard to put down as the author is increasingly affected by the actions of the family as he tries to record their story. You'll find yourself rooting for both the author and the family as the story progresses, and the ending doesn't disappoint. The Martins is a fascinating book about the process of writing and a quick and uplifting read. Thank you.
All right, so my next book is a romance novel. It's written by Jean Meltzer. Meltzer writes Jewish contemporary romance novels. Her most popular is The Matzah Ball, but my favorite is Mr. Perfect on Paper. Both are available in our romance section. This book is titled The Eight Heartbreaks of Hanukkah. It came out yesterday, so our copy is currently on order. This book is a Jewish twist on a Jewish Christmas Carol. I know, it's very silly. So our main character is Evelyn, and she is a producer at CBS Studios. She's a very ambitious woman, but she is like a serial workaholic. She doesn't really have a problem with it, but her relationships are kind of breaking down. She has no friends outside of work. She can barely talk to her mom, and she's been divorced from her ex-husband for 2 years. So this Hanukkah, her schedule is jam-packed because she is producing a televised version of A Christmas Carol. So she's feeling prepared to take on this challenge until she hits her head on set and is sent to the studio's medical room. There she finds that her ex-husband, David, has taken a temporary role and will be there throughout the entire time she's running the production, because of course he is there. So light Hanukkah magic ensues, and she is met with the ghost of Hanukkah's past, where she must relive one heartbreak for all 8 nights. I know. The ghosts show her the breakdowns of her relationship with David in this Jewish remake of A Christmas Carol. This book was really fun. It just has a lot of Jewish joy, and it's just so silly, but beware, like it does have some dark themes. There's a lot of grief and trauma in this book, so just, know that going in. If you can get over the hump of like the dark themes, it was just really silly, and a good light read for the holidays. I really enjoy the way that Meltzer shows different characters celebrating different holidays. It's fun for me to contrast, from her different books and think about like how my family celebrates. That's my favorite aspect of these books, is just the difference of the way that people celebrate. So yeah, all of Meltzer's books are really, really fun, and just a touch ridiculous, like a Jewish Hallmark movie. Soon to be available at the Glencoe Public Library.
Who here has a cat? My book is Will Prescribe You Another Cat, which follows Will Prescribe You a Cat. Will Prescribe You Another Cat is a sequel to Will Prescribe You a Cat, and a bestseller in Japan, and part of a growing genre of Japanese feel-good fiction. There are a ton of these books out there. Do you like cats? Do you like interlinked short stories about people looking for solutions to problems in their lives? Are you looking for something light and uplifting with hints of magic? Then this is the book for you. The people in this book are referred to a clinic called the Kokoro Clinic for the Soul by a friend who knows a coworker who went to college with someone whose cousin had a good experience at the clinic. The clinic doesn't have an address, but is described as being south of one street, north of another, east of another, and west of another street. In fact, the clinic can only be found by those who are referred to it in this roundabout way, and those who go seeking the clinic deliberately often can't find it. The clinic itself is staffed by a nurse and a doctor in a small office in a mostly vacant building at the end of a long hallway. When people enter the office, they are always told that the doctor is not taking new clients now, but since the doctor's next appointment has not shown yet, they can go ahead and see him. The doctor asks the patient a few questions and then invariably tells the patient he is going to prescribe them a cat, which is then brought into the room by the nurse. The cats vary in size and temperament, but instructions and a bag of food and litter are always provided, with instructions to return the cat in 5 to 10 days, depending on the dose needed. The prescribed cats are normal cats, but somehow they always end up helping the patient solve a problem in their life, whether through destruction, mischief, or just plain cuteness. Patients treated with a cat include a disheartened businessman, a young girl navigating school cliques, a handbag designer seeking emotional balance, and a geisha struggling to move on after the loss of her own cat. Seriously, these books are peculiar and addictive. The covers are just incredibly cute. If you're looking for a light read to take your mind off current events, this book is for you. And a third title in the series is scheduled to be published in the near future. Full disclosure, I have 2 cats at home, and I wanted to tell you, before every chapter is an illustration of the cat that is going to be prescribed as the medicine. This book is both books are available at the Glencoe Public Library.
Okay, I've been told to ask the crowd if anyone hosts regularly at their house.
I have.
Yep. Okay, a couple people. Okay, that's good. That's more than I expected. So, this this is my final book. This is a nonfiction pick. It's called Having People Over: A Modern Guide to Planning, Throwing, and Attending Every Type of Party. Nonfiction books have very long titles. It's by Chelsea Fagan. And she is the CEO and founder of The Financial Diet. It's a blog that, in her words, demystifies money and makes financial literacy accessible for women and beyond. She also wrote a book under the same title, which I would like to read sometime soon. It's pretty short, but her guides are very interesting. So this book is part memoir, part guide, part blog post, part cookbook, part think piece. It is an amalgamation of a lot of things. Chelsea shares her thoughts on why people are hosting less in 2025, and how to host regularly with minimal effort. What I liked about this book is that it is practical and relatively universal. While I do think some of the tips lean a bit towards people who are newer to hosting, like myself, Chelsea kind of implies like a fill-in-the-blank strategy. So she expects her readers to take her tips with a grain of salt and fill in, your budget, your experience, your style into those tips. She talks a lot about how people feel as though dinner parties have to be expensive, but she shows that a party can be thrown on any budget. For example, if you don't want to cook or can't spend the money on feeding everyone, you can throw a potluck. You can, because I recently threw a housewarming potluck, okay? And I got 30 under 25-year-olds to all bring a dish. If I can do it, you can do it too. Under 25-year-olds, come on. A very important theme in this book is fostering adult platonic friendships. She's very passionate about making time for your friends and showing up for your friends. She talks about how we often expect everything from our partners. And we need to branch out a little bit. We need to foster new friendships and continue with our old ones. A big reason why she believes that people are hosting less is because they don't rely on one another anymore. And part of that is due to the ease and convenience of technology. In her own words, she said, "We can call an Uber rather than have a friend pick us up from the airport. We can just have groceries delivered when we're sick rather than having a neighbor bring us food. We don't even feel the need to reach out on social media and catch up with people because we see a constant highlight reel of their lives. On the surface, we might say that this reduces headaches for everyone and makes life easier, but the truth is that those tiny little moments of mutual reliance actually make us happier in the long run." There is so much information in this book, including several recipes. I cannot do all of her thoughts justice because I really, really enjoyed this. Soon to be available at the Glencoe Public Library. It came out yesterday, so our copy is currently on order.
Next section deals primarily with young adult titles. Now, I know for a lot of people that immediately is like children's stories, and you feel like it's not necessarily going to be something that appeals to you. YA literature has changed quite a bit over the last 30 years. It is no longer children's stories. It is sophisticated stories with difficult topics. Some of the topics that have come out in the last 10 years, 15 years in young adult are titles like The Fault in Our Stars, which deals with extremely difficult topics about health and decisions about your life and the complications that can cause in your relationships. There's also The Hate You Give, which deals with the very difficult topic of racism and how it affects people of color, how it affects people that are white. It really is a challenging topic, and it's really handled well in that book. And then things like dystopian literature. That's something that most people think of these days when you think about YA because of series like The Hunger Games, Twilight technically is dystopian literature. Things like the entire Hunger Games series really pulls on that theory of a deterioration in society and what that can look like. And that's not a light topic. That's something that really takes a lot to think about. So we have those topics in YA, but now we're finding a lot more things that are delving into more adult emotions. And the difference is YA books present these topics with less graphic language. So it's not shying away from any of the topics you would find in a regular adult fiction book. It is simply presenting it in language that is more appropriate for people that are teenagers. So it doesn't shy away from it at all. It is strictly presenting it from a different way of describing it. All right, so the first book I'm going to talk about today is a young adult selection. And I handed everybody a little map. This map has to do with this book. This book is Under a Fire Red Sky. It's by Geraldine Macarene. That's not what her name looks like, but I found out that's how it's pronounced, Macarene. It actually comes out November 4th. So this book isn't out yet, but we do have it on order. And this book is about the Blitz in London. And really, I will say that the Blitz is the main character of the story. It's the setting and the place and the time. And the characters are all supporting cast for that. Because we're talking about a place and time that's very unique. It's probably something that we hope most people aren't going to see in their lifetime, where suddenly you have a residential area of a city that is being bombed repeatedly. I know we're seeing that in places like the Ukraine now, and I'm thinking that that will have an effect on how we see literature like this in the future. But Under a Fire Red Sky starts in September 1939. That is when World War II is declared. The British government has established Operation Pied Piper. That is the procedure, process, the gathering of all of the children in London and getting them out of the city to keep them safe. So they're putting them on trains, they're taking them to Wales, they're taking them to the Cotswolds, they're taking them to places in the country that are far less likely to be targets. It gets the children out of the way so parents can actually work on things for their own preparation within the city. It also protects the next generation. So when the story starts out, we have 4 teenagers that have been put on a train to be taken to Wales. And these teenagers don't want to go. They immediately, all 4 of them, realize they have no interest in leaving. They have reasons to stay, and none of them want to leave the city. So our characters are never said how old they are, but they are relatively close to 16, if not a little, almost 17. The reason why we can guess that is they're too young to enlist, and you can enlist at 17 with your parents' permission. They also are too young to do other jobs like be part of an air warden system or be firefighters. So we know that they have not reached that 17-year mark yet, but they are older teens. So on this train, these 4 kids meet each other. They're all the same age, and they all decide they're going to get off the train together. So our first character is Franklin. Franklin is a young man who really wants to be a firefighter. He wants to be useful. He wants to help. And he's going from firehouse to firehouse to firehouse, and he's rejected everywhere. He's actually attacked at one firehouse because they think he's 17 and he's a coward for not enrolling in the military. So he is desperate to prove himself. He really, really wants to show that he's able to help. Next, we have Olive. Olive wants to stay near her father. Her father is a firefighter at the Invictus School in her neighborhood. She lives in Greenwich, and she wants to stay there to be there for her father. She fears for him. She knows that he's going to be in danger. She also wants to be there to remember the people she knows are going to die. She's very affected by the first war casualty that she sees. It was a downed British pilot that was burned in the cockpit of his plane. And she now wants to remember who that person was. She's named him Johnny, and she remembers him every day. She wants to do the same for everybody that she loses. Next, we have Lawrence. Lawrence is kind of the brain of the group, very smart, extremely intelligent. He's actually building his own aircraft called an aviette. It's actually it's an airplane that's based on a bicycle frame. He's building this himself. He's been building it for a while. It's kind of his ambition to finish it. He's also the one that kind of takes everybody under his wing and starts leading them around to show them different places in their area that could possibly one day not be there anymore if the bombing starts. He wants to educate them and show them what's around. Finally, we have Jemmy. Jemmy has several names. Her real name isn't Jemmy, it's Susan, but she doesn't tell anyone that. When we meet her, she is calling herself the Gremlin because she's poor, she's run away from her abusive father, who lives on a farm, and she wants to be in the city. And her intention at the beginning of the story is to live off of the destruction of the war. She's going to go through rubble of houses and find things that will keep her alive. So that's our 4 people to start. She gets the name Jemmy because Olive gives her that nickname kind of on a whim, and they just keep calling her that throughout. So these friends start visiting places in London that, again, they're worried aren't going to be there eventually. And they call themselves the Meridians. The reason why is because they're from Greenwich. They're all in Greenwich, which is right where the Prime Meridian runs through. So that's why they dub themselves the Meridians. They are very eager to be useful, but again, it's the phony war in London. The phony war was the time between World War II being declared and before the Blitz began. People were hyper prepared. They were ready for everything, and nothing was happening.
What year?
This is 1939, September 1939. And people are hyper prepared. They are so eager to be able to fight back, to do something, and nothing happens. And people start letting their guard down. When the bombing starts in earnest, though, they are going to see destruction that they couldn't have imagined. And it affects each of them very deeply. Franklin does eventually get a job as a firefighter, but it's not what he thought it was going to be. It's a lot more harrowing. It's a lot more dangerous. Lawrence is kind of disappearing every day. They're not quite sure where he goes, but he too is very distraught about what he sees going on around him. Olive is in a constant state of despair because she's worried about her father. And Jemmy is living in a van in the freezing weather with a dog. And the four of them are still friends, but they are all dealing with all of these outside forces that mean their friendship is so much more important to them. It's their one getaway from what they're feeling and what they're thinking. So really this book focuses primarily on friendship. It is focusing how trauma can actually bring people together. It can separate them as well, but it can also bring people together and help them to feel like they can rely on each other because they have a shared past. You've seen the same things I've seen. You're aware of the same things I'm aware. And that helps them to really appreciate each other in a way that they hadn't before. And again, it is a YA book, but they're not shying away from death. They're not shying away from destruction. You see a lot of that in this story. Now, the handout that I gave you just shows exactly the section of London that we're talking about here in Greenwich. This was a very heavily bombed section of London during World War II. And the reason is because of this little bend in the river here. That's called the Isle of Dogs. And the Isle of Dogs is very distinctive from the air. So German bombers could find it really easily. They would just unload their bombs and it would go all through this area. It's also where a lot of wharfs and docks are. So you would have a lot of shipping that would come from there. So it was a strategic target as well. But if you're interested, there's a link along the bottom of the page here. It's a website called Layers of London. If you go there, you can actually see a map of every bomb strike in London during the Blitz. They mapped it. And you can see just how heavily these areas were hit. It's super interesting to go back and look at because it really puts into perspective what these people went through. So I highly recommend this book. Again, it comes out November 4th, so please look for it next month.
Are there plans for a film?
I would hope so. It sounds like it would be a really, really great. There's a few films out there that are similar to that. I don't know if you've ever heard of the film. It's a John Borman film, Hope and Glory. Mm-hmm. That one deals with a family also living in London during the war and during the Blitz. It's very good. If you get a chance to watch it. I'm sorry?
Can we get any of
Oh, sure. We can get all of those. Mm-hmm.
the movies?
Hope and Glory? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure if we own a copy of it, but I know at least 2 other libraries own a copy of it. Yes, we can absolutely get a copy. Mm-hmm. All right, so the next book is Glass Girls. This one I picked a little bit because of the time of year. This one does deal with a little bit of magic and witchcraft, but that's a secondary story to what's actually going on in the story. So Glass Girls is by Dani Shuki. Actually, one of our librarians, Matthew, knows this person. He took a creative writing class with her. So this one came out in June. It is available in our collection right now. It's really kind of a thriller. It's not really straight fiction. It's definitely a thriller. I wouldn't call it horror, but it's a super, super compelling story about a girl. I picked this at first because of the blurb that was published with it. The blurb was, "A former child medium is forced to face her abusive past." To quote the author, Glass Girls is a love letter to sibling relationships. It's an ode to Cleveland, Ohio, and it's a declaration of bodily autonomy in a post-Roe world. An ode to Cleveland, Ohio is what grabbed my attention. If you're not aware of this, Cleveland, Ohio often gets called the mistake on the lake. And I was like, interesting. Somebody's writing an ode to Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, I've been there. It's a perfectly nice city. But it was just an unusual ode. You don't usually hear people writing odes to Cleveland. So the main character in this book is Isabeau Glass, or Beau. But she's also Alice Hasserat. Isabeau is the name she's born with, that her family calls her Beau. Alice Hasserat is the name she chooses when she escapes from her traumatic past. So we see her at different times in her life. We see her as a child. We also see her as an adult. Now, Isabeau is a child who's living with her mother. She has a sister named Bronwyn that's a year older than her. And her mother's name is Giselle. And the kids both call their mother Giselle. They don't call her mom. They've never called her mom. And it's a perfect example of the type of relationship that they have with each other. There's very little mothering going on here. Giselle is not a good mother. She's not a warm person. She's kind of a controlling person. And the girls are really looking to each other for any kind of emotional support that they get. Now, one day Giselle sits Bo and Bronwyn down and she tells them a story. And the story is about a young girl, a teenager, who falls in love with a man. And she is madly in love, head over heels in love. But this girl is a witch. She has magic powers. And she can't be with this man. So she's told then that if you want to be with this man, you have to get rid of your powers. And the way you get rid of your powers is you cut out your shadow. You cut it out from the bottom of your feet. And they mean that literally. This means that she will then be able to be with this man, but she's also going to have a curse. And the curse is that her daughters will always have powers. They'll be powerful witches. But any son she has, and any son her ancestors have, will die before the age of 19. So this is the cost of saying she wants to be with this man. The girls are terrified by this. Number one, they're starting to notice that they have powers of their own, and they can't imagine getting rid of that. But they're also terrified at the idea of, number one, having cut out their own shadow, but also of having a child that they're going to have to say goodbye to, and know that they're going to have to say goodbye to. So the story begins with hearing that story, and then Bo is slowly introduced to her own magical powers. She's at the park one day, and while she's at the park, she sees a woman. And the woman is talking to her, but nobody else can see her. Bo is a medium, and she's a medium with a very particular power. Not only can she talk to the dead, but she can see them. And this is not something that most mediums can do. And she finds this out at the age of 4, which had to be terrifying, to have a person following you and saying, I'm not ready to go, I'm not ready to go. So she is terrified by her own powers. So Giselle is a seer of the future. She actually uses tarot cards for that. And this is how the family makes their money. Giselle has people come in, she reads their future to them, they pay her. One day, Giselle sees a man in her future. She reads it in the tarot cards. So she puts an ad in the paper and has a flood of men coming to visit with her. She has been glamored, which is a spell to make her look beautiful, and she's on her best behavior. And each of these men come in, she gives them a reading, and then she sends them on their way, saying, well, this isn't the right one, this isn't the right one. Finally, a man named Frank comes in, and Frank is the right one. And she beguiles him, and suddenly they're going to get married, as if by magic. So Frank becomes Bo and Bronwyn's only real parent figure. He's a wonderful person. He's extremely kind to them. He takes them places. He talks to them. He's nurturing, all the things that Giselle has never been. But Giselle finds out that she's pregnant, and lo and behold, she gives birth to a boy. And this creates a complete breakdown in Giselle. She's horrified. She doesn't want to engage with the child. But this gives Bo and Bronwyn and Frank an opportunity to really bond with this child. They all become extremely close. And they're a very loving group, as long as you leave Giselle over here. So, Killian's everybody's favorite, that's his name, and they do everything that they can to try to protect him. But there really isn't any way to protect him from his fate. Now, Bo, since she's a medium, as time goes on, her mother starts to exploit that skill. She starts advertising seances. She makes Bo dress up and glamour herself in lots of really cool seance outfits that they describe all through the book, which is kind of a cool thing. She is all dressed up and forced to go to these seances. Most of the time it's nothing. There's nobody there. Until they go to a seance where there's a poltergeist, and the poltergeist attacks her. That's something that's different about ghosts and poltergeists. Ghosts can't attack you, a poltergeist can. This leads the family down a very dark road, because the fact that they have a poltergeist and it's leading Giselle to have an idea about how to save Killian, it leads them to a really dark spot. Now, Bo is being severely abused by her mother all this time. She's being forced to stay there. She's being forced to perform magic she doesn't want to. She finally gets away. This is where she becomes Alice Hasserat. She leaves. She's able to establish her own life in Michigan, and she meets a young man named Eli. She and Eli become a couple. They live together. He's a very talented architect, but they both are damaged people. They both have trauma in their past, and they both can't get past that trauma. Alice has nightmares that he has to wake her from, that she is just distraught over. Eli has a severe eating disorder, which is unusual. I actually was very drawn to that because it's very unusual that a male has an eating disorder in a book. It's almost always a female that will. But eating disorders can affect anybody. So he has a severe eating disorder. So she is always trying to keep him calm, keep his life very mellow so that he is not stressed. Well, his mother's coming to visit, which is a stressful thing for both of them. But Alice goes to the store to pick up supplies for dinner, and she hears somebody say, Bo. And she turns around and it's her sister. She hasn't seen her sister for 15 years. She's terrified, but this is going to be the start of how she's going to have to reconcile what happened in her past in order to have a future. So it really investigates how secrets can destroy your life, how secrets can make any relationship damaged, how it can break the best of relationships. But it's a really, really great example of how broken trust is very, very hard to overcome. So I really recommend Glass Girls. This is a great story. Really, really well written and very lyrical. All right, the next one, this one is a little shorter of a review, but this one is 7 for a Secret. This one is called 7 for a Secret. Again, this is a YA title. This is one that I would call more of a mystery thriller. This one starts with a young lady named Nev. She's a 17-year-old girl. She is an emancipated minor, which means she is alone responsible for herself. She has no family. And she lives in Johnstown, Maryland. Nev knows how to take care of herself. She actually starts out the book at a martial arts event where she takes down a boy that is much bigger than her. She knows how to defend herself, and she defends herself from everybody, including psychologically. One night, Nev is walking through town, and she walks past the river, and she sees a body floating in the water, and she recognizes the body. It is the chief of police from the town she used to live in, on Avon Island. Avon Island is not technically an island, it's kind of more of an isthmus, but it's off of Johnstown, Maryland. And she is stunned to see that that man is there, but she doesn't report it because she's afraid of what would happen if she did. So the next day, this man is found. His name is Charles. He was the chief of police for Avon Island. She keeps calling him derogatorily Chuck because she doesn't like him. But Chuck was found in the water with his badge next to him, but otherwise wearing nothing. Nev is standing there watching all of this going on and seeing this hullabaloo around this man that she once knew. And suddenly she sees a familiar face, and that is Roan. Roan is somebody she knows from her past. And they have a shared past, actually. They are both young girls that live at a group home called Sister's Place. Sister's Place is on Avon Island. It was a group home that was run by the town, and it had about 12 girls there. And these girls all had no families of their own. So when Nev sees Roan, she's stunned. She hasn't seen any of these girls for a long time. The home had closed down about 5 years earlier because 7 of the girls went missing. And nobody ever knew what happened to them. Nev and Roan and all of the girls who weren't taken are all sure that there was some kind of a conspiracy to make this happen, but they can't prove it. Roan is now a reporter. She's an investigative reporter. She looks into crimes that haven't been solved, which is perfect because they have 7 crimes that haven't been solved. Roan tells Nev that she's going back to Avon Island to find out what's going on there. And Nev says, well, I'm coming too. Now, Roan is 5 years older than Nev. Nev is still a teenager. She has a social worker. Technically, she's not supposed to be leaving without talking to her social worker. But they leave and go back to Avon Island together. And slowly, while they're there, more and more of the town fathers keep turning up dead. And what also happens is more and more of the girls that she had known from Sister's Place keep showing up in places of low power that are going to end up being very useful to them. One of the girls is now an assistant coroner. One of the girls is now a medical examiner. Another one of the girls works for the police department. Another girl works for the city. So they suddenly have an in to information that they didn't have access to before. The base of the story goes through how these girls solve what happened, both what happened now and what happened 5 years ago. But it's a really beautiful description of friendship. This one, out of all of the books that I read, is probably the most beautifully written. It's very lyrical. It's very in-depth for describing what is going on in someone's head when they're suffering from PTSD, when they're suffering from trauma, what they go through, what they see, and how things that may not affect somebody else is going to deeply affect them. The relationship between all of the girls is beautiful. They support each other, they take care of each other. Nev was the youngest girl at the group home, so she was kind of everybody's baby. And the fact that she survived and a bunch of the girls that were older than her didn't has left her very damaged. But it's a wonderful story talking about how they go through this process of figuring out what happened and finding closure. And they find real closure at the end. So it's really a worthy read. I absolutely recommend it. I recommend all three of these, but this one in particular is the best written of the three that I've read. So, but thank you all for being here today. Does anybody have any questions for any of us about any of the books we talked about? Wonderful. Well, thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate it.